Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be doing another end of month ranking for the month of April 2025. Now if you want to check out other monthly rankings, they'll be in the link down below, along with some 2025 movie reviews, a few of the ones I'm going to talk about in here. Now I do have 10 movies to talk about this time, which beats last month by a while. We did have 4 movies last month, but yeah, bit of a larger video this one. But I still try and keep it short and sweet. However, there are some movies I am missing that I did want to get to. One of them is Screamboat, and the reason for that is we did only have one showing here in my local cinema, and it was on the same day as the Merseyside derby, and Everton are my favourite football team. I just couldn't miss that, you know, for this movie, which I can catch later on in the year. But I believe it's coming to VOD and Blu-ray at the start of May, so I'll put it in next month's video. Also, for a Whacker, which is another release, another Shudder original. I started watching that movie, but I was so tired, and I only watched about 50% of it because I kept waking up and going back to sleep. I was just so tired. And I didn't return to it because I didn't really like the look of what that movie had shown me so far. And there's only so much time you get in life, and I just didn't want to waste it watching something I know I'm not going to like there. Although there are movies on this list that I kind of knew I weren't going to like. But that one just weren't vibing with me at all. So I thought I was just going to miss it off. I don't think I'm going to return to it for a Whacker, unfortunately. And just a heads up, guys, there may be some movies in this list that are horror adjacent, maybe more classed as thriller or whatever, but I threw them in anyway to basically give me a chance to talk about them a little bit more. And there are plenty of horror elements in them to class them in this video. So let's just get into it now, guys, with the first thing. Well, sorry, should I say, last place in this video, the worst movie that I watched in April 2025. So in 10th place, we do have Shiver Me Timbers. This is the 3rd Popeye movie that is released this year, believe it or not, because that character went into the public domain, of course, and this is becoming a little bit of a common trope now, isn't it? You know, releasing these movies, we have plenty of them, and there's plenty more to come. I just hope they are better in quality than this film. This is one of the worst movies I have seen all year, and probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The only positives I could give this film is that the slasher fan inside me sort of could maybe get along with it when the kills were happening. But the kills weren't even great anyway, but they were mildly entertaining, I suppose. The movie is only 73 minutes long, so you don't have to hang around too much, which is also a negative because you don't want to be in the movie anyway, I suppose. And there was a fun little ending sequence that was ruined by dodgy CGI. But once it all started up, I thought it was quite fun. But this movie was just plagued with terrible characters, awful acting. The dialogue, my God, was so cringy. They were taking quotes out of other movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and stuff, but trying to be very serious with them. The whole story was terrible. It was all centering around comets and meteors. And what happens is this tiny little meteor drops into this old guy's smoke pipe, and that's what turns him into Popeye. And he just goes on this rampage around these woods, beach type area where these characters are staying, getting stoned and stuff, the usual stuff that you relate to with horror slasher movies. And he looked terrible. I don't know what the hell was going on with his face. I couldn't work out if it was practical or CGI. It kind of looked like a CGI type special effect put on the face there. He looked awful. I mean, Popeye the Slayer, man, I don't think he looked great in that, but he was way better in that movie than he was in this one. And there was these so terrible pieces of editing thrown in there. Like, as the movie tries to get going, we will just have characters point to the sky, and we will see, like, comets flying over the sky on this dodgy sort of Windows 95 graphic there. I mean, it was a dreadful movie, I thought. And I usually like to give indie filmmakers the benefit of the doubt. But this, like Mickey's Mousetrap, I just think they're making it for the quick cash buck. There's no heart poured into it. Unlike Popeye the Slayer Man and Popeye's Revenge, I do think the director and the filmmakers and the crew were trying there. But this one, no, it just wasn't for me. And I don't think they are even slasher fans, the people who made this movie. It was just really bad. Yeah, so definitely the worst Popeye movie and one of the worst Popeye movies one of the worst horror movies of the entire year. So that is Shiver Me Timbers. Next up, we do have Shadow of God, a Shudder original. Now, this one started off really positive, I thought. This was about this priest doing an exorcism, and whilst he's doing it, his co-priest, like the guy who's helping him, dies. And he finds out that night that there was like 6 or 7 exorcisms happening across the world, and they all lost a priest in them exorcisms. Kind of like this demonic uprising that was happening. Also, there's this main sort of subplot. I say main subplot because it's sort of the other main part of the story, along with the old exorcism thing, is that his father died many years ago, and then he sees his father, and his father is suddenly back alive, even though he thought he was dead. And his father really wants him to do this exorcism on him. So he does this unauthorized exorcism, and things just go a little bit kooky and haywire there. So like I said, it started off like a little bit of a creepy premise. The acting was fine, especially from the main guy in this movie. Not actors I've ever seen before in anything, to be honest, so I can't really remember the names and stuff. But also, I don't really have too many great memories with this movie at all. I only watched it a few weeks ago. It's a very forgettable film, put it that way. There's a lot of religious stuff thrown in there, like religious sort of language, if you like, and priests talking religious, and all to do with Catholicism. And yeah, it's not my type of subgenre. The exorcism subgenre is not one I really ever go to. It's not one of my favorites, and I kind of find them all to be quite bland and the same. Although this one did try something a little bit different there, but ultimately it just fell flat, and the third act seemed to go on forever. I just kind of lost interest at the midway point. Yeah, so I know it's a low budget movie, but the special effects that they were using in the third act and stuff just really threw me off. I thought it looked really bad, and ultimately this is just a movie that just didn't work for me at all. So sorry I can't elaborate on it too much, guys, but it was a very forgetful film, a very bland movie, a very meh Shudder original, and it won't be the first and it won't be the last of them now, will it? So unfortunately, wasn't a great film. That is Shadow of God. Next up, we have Until Dawn, based on the video game. I have never actually watched the video game, played the video game, but I kind of went into this one with high hopes. I watched about 30 seconds of the trailer and thought, this one looked really good, actually, so I'm not going to watch any more of the trailer. I'm kind of going to go in a little bit blind. My wife watched the trailer and she went, I really like the look of that. So we went to see it, and unfortunately, this was a bit of a disappointment, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise because video game movies are usually disappointments anyway now, aren't they? But you do get the odd one that works. I believe this strayed away from the story of the game, which never works. I don't know why they do that. But this is basically a bit of a Groundhog Day horror movie, where these characters are looking for another character that went missing the year before, and they find this house, and they basically are killed by this guy walking around who's like really cool looking slasher villain. Actually, I think he was one of the positives of this movie. And then they all wake up and they are back to where they are standing in at the register when they first get to the house, and they've got to survive the night until dawn, obviously, to be able to get out of this place. But these different type of various monsters keep hunting them down, not just the slasher guy. And I thought that was a little bit too much. You know, they tried to be a little bit too ambitious with what they were doing. There was all like hidden extra information thrown in and ways they could get out, new rules thrown in from left, right, and centre, and kind of just didn't work. It became a little bit too complex of a movie for me. But yeah, the acting was fine. Some of the characters were unlikable, but the acting was on point, I suppose. The girl from the Hellraiser reboot was in there. I thought she was solid enough. She was my favourite character in the movie. But it just tried to, like I say, try too much and become complex. And there's loads of jump scares thrown in there that never work. You can telegraph every single one of them. I've heard people say that the monsters look fine, but here I don't think they do. Maybe they just weren't scary to me. Some of the kills were good. I mean, there's people's skulls being bashed in and eyes popping out and stuff. Some of the practical effects there look pretty damn awesome. And it ended on a decent note. But overall, this just felt like an everyday average horror movie to me. It felt like another Blumhouse release, and it's not even Blumhouse. But you know what I'm talking about there. The movies that Blumhouse just throw out every other week now. That's kind of what it felt like. So, Sony, I hope that you can up your game a little bit, because you got some great IPs there. You know, you done okay with Uncharted, but it was nothing really memorable or, you know, hitting it out the ballpark or anything. But you've got God of War there, you know, other types of games that you can really turn into great movies. But this one just didn't hit the mark, unfortunately. Peter Stormare was pretty good, but he's good in everything, and I believe he was in the game, so at least they carried that in there. So that is Until Dawn. Next up, we have Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Now, I know this came out in January in select cinemas, but we didn't get it here on VOD or Blu-ray until this month. But I was really anticipating this one. I think Jagged Edge Productions really upped their game with the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2. I thought it was way better than the original, even though I still like the original. I know there's a lot of haters in that movie, so I thought, okay, let's see what they can do with this one. I actually really enjoyed this. This is a very dark, bleak, and sinister movie, kind of like the Winnie the Pooh movies are. They don't really throw any comedy in there whatsoever, even though I think that could probably work in their favour if they did, and make it a more fun experience. But I also do like bleak and dark movies, so this kind of works for me as well. I just think they might get a few more people on board if they go down that route. But then again, we're getting too many comedy horrors lately, aren't they? So why not? Well done to Jagged Edge, I suppose, for sticking to their principles and doing what they want to do. This is the most grounded story you could ever get with Peter Pan. If it was a horror film, it doesn't go into the fantasy realm or anything like that. It basically is just about this psychopathic killer, Peter Pan, who wants to take these kids to Neverland, and that will be explained later on in the movie. You might think this is a fantasy type place that he wants to take them to, but I won't reveal too much, but it kind of gets explained later on. We also have Tinkerbell in there, but what they do with that character makes it believable that this could actually happen by someone who has been sort of lured in by a psychopath, if you like. I don't want to say too much more than that if you guys haven't seen it, but like I said, it makes sense. It makes sense that Peter Pan could be a grounded horror film with what they do with the story here. Some really damp and depressing moments in here involving kids being killed and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted, this one. It's a pretty grim experience, but I think the guy who played Peter Pan was awesome. He was kind of reminded me of Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. I think that's what they were definitely going for with this. It's kind of like, it's an example of how they keep the Peter Pan lore in there. They have pixie dust, which is actually heroin, which is what Peter Pan is sort of addicted to and stuff like that. That's how they sort of work around all these things to do with the Peter Pan story, if you like. But yeah, really, I like the two protagonists as well. We kind of had the sister and brother. She was kind of looking for him and stuff like that. So it was nicely shot as well, I suppose, for a low budget movie. So yeah, I didn't mind this one. Like all the movies from this point on and upwards, I quite enjoyed. So yeah, Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare is what I would actually return to, as bleak as an experience it is. But I've got kind of faith in Jagged Edge now to carry on with these IPs. If I'm ever going to have trust in anyone doing these public domain characters, it's probably going to be them, because I've really enjoyed 2 out of the 3 movies, and I even liked the one everyone hated as well. So bring on Bambi, I believe it is the next one. Looking forward to that, and we've got a Pinocchio movie coming from them as well. So that is Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Next up, we do have Hell of a Summer, and this is actually directed by Finn Wolfhard from Ghostbusters fame and Stranger Things, of course, along with his friend Billy Burke, who I'm not too familiar with, to be honest, but good to see Finn Wolfhard and his friend, of course, getting out there in the director's chair. This is basically a camp slasher movie, which follows Paul Herchinger's character, who is this guy who's like 24, 25 years old, and he probably should have left summer camp by now, but he can't help himself. He keeps wanting to go back because he just lives for it. This is his favorite thing to do. At the start of the movie, the 2 camp leaders are killed. It's not a spoiler, it happens in the first scene. And he thinks that they have left him in charge of this camp and these camp counselors. And he really sort of takes to that role. and feels like he's found his belonging in life. And I just thought this movie was so funny, the way he kept going on, like how important camp life is, you know, reading the rules out to people, getting some activities ready for the next day and stuff, you know, just really taking it all in there and living and breathing this camp leader. But like I said, guys, it's a camp slasher, but it is definitely more of a comedic movie. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke feel like they're fans of 80s slasher movies, and they've tried to incorporate this as much as they can into the story. There is just way too much comedy in here. It's more of a comedy than a slasher film. So the way this was marketed was a slasher film, and I feel like that's why a lot of people have been disappointed by this. But I kind of knew it going in, and me and my wife really got a few laughs out of this film. In fact, we were laughing at most scenes in this film. It's one of the funniest films I've seen all year. I think the characters were fun. The whole dialogue that they have, you know, there's just lots of funny one-liners and stuff like that. The reveal of the killer in this movie didn't really do it for me for a certain reason where I can't really say, but it really annoys me when killer reveals are done this way. Maybe you'll know what I mean when you see the movie, but if you really, really do want to know, leave it in the comment section and I'll explain what I mean in that. The kills, whilst being fun, some of them, they're not really gory or anything like that. They're just kind of cut away from the camera type kills. So they're basically all off screen, if you like. So the look of the killer and everything isn't great, but it's a fun movie. I love movies that take place in summer camps, and this was another fun one. I would return to this film. I would watch it again. So if that's your type of thing, give it a shot. That is Hell of a Summer. Next up, we do have Death of a Unicorn, which is a movie that's got a pretty stacked cast here. We've got Jenna Ortega, Richard E. Grant, Will Poulter, and Paul Rudd, of course. Now, this sees Paul Rudd and his daughter going on this business venture to make a deal with these rich people who are Richard E. Grant's and his family. I mean, Jenna Ortega is just along for the ride, but Paul Rudd is doing this really important business meeting. But on the way, he hits this unicorn that is just running out in the wild. And he finds out that this unicorn blood is kind of sacred, really. It can cure many diseases like cancer. And there's one bit where he gets a bit of blood in his eye and his vision is cured and he doesn't need his glasses no more. And these rich people kind of find out that he has hit this unicorn and that this blood can cure many diseases. And they try and do this even bigger business deal with Paul Rudd. And it's kind of like him having to work that out so he can become rich and also balance the whole daddy-daughter thing going on there, because Jenna Ortega is kind of against what these rich people are wanting to do. And there's some good social commentary in there, really, about the rich and how they take what they want, when they want, how they want. But, you know, there's got to be consequences sometimes, and that is the unicorns coming for a little bit of revenge because one of their family members was killed. And with that, we do get some really fun, gory deaths. There's some great characters in here. Will Poulter absolutely stole the show. Me and my wife were laughing our ass off at some of the dialogue and one-liners he's got in the movie. Jenna Ortega, great again, as usual. I really liked Richard E. Grant in this film. I think Paul Rudd is kind of wasted. I mean, he didn't bring too much comedy to the movie. And sometimes the comedy doesn't really land. I mean, sometimes it does, but half the time it doesn't. And you could be mistaken for this not even being a horror film. It only really gets to the horror in kind of the third act when the unicorns start running wild and stuff. It's a little bit of a weird movie for an A24 film as well. Now, they usually do weird, but what I mean by that is, I don't know if it kind of fits with what they usually bring, but I suppose they're just doing all kinds of stuff lately anyway, aren't they? So, yeah. Probably not a relevant thing to bring up, but I think this movie was really fun. It was a little bit long. It kind of went on for a little bit too much with what it was trying to do. I don't think it had to be that. I could have cut it off for about 20 minutes there. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fine. Didn't love it, but it was one of the better movies I've seen this year. So that is Death of a Unicorn. Next up, we have a Shudder original, and that is Dead Male. I'm really, really surprised by this one because I think it's in like my top 10 movies there of the year so far. It might even be like top 6. And this is a very interesting film. So this is basically about this guy who has been kidnapped, and in the opening scene, we see him crawl out the house as he's getting free, and he posts this letter through the mailbox saying, "Please help me, I'm at this address." And there's a little bit of blood left on the letter and everything. And then he is dragged back into the house by the kidnapper. And we then go and cut to this guy who is responsible for finding where mail has come from that's been lost in the post, hence the title Dead Mail. And he is trying to track down where this letter came from. But it sort of goes down very many sinister routes and sort of goes back on itself, and we learn where this letter has actually come from, why this guy has been kidnapped, who this guy is who's kidnapped him and stuff. And I don't want to say too much more than that, but you kind of get three different type of perspectives throughout the film. We sort of get the guy who's doing the mail, you know, trying to track the letter down, the guy who's the kidnapper, and this sort of girls who work in the postal office trying to find out as well what's going on with the whole situation, basically. I thought it was a really clever movie. It's set in the 80s, but it doesn't really have that fun 80s vibe. It kind of has that more depressing time of the 80s where, you know, even the post office looks dull and dreary. It's got a real, like, clammy filter put on there, but it kind of just totally works. The whole movie is kind of centered around musical equipment. I won't say too much more on that, but you'll get what I mean. And there's lots of, when you see the film with the story, but there's lots of synth noises thrown in here and there as the camera cuts away and stuff. It really did work. But yeah, I mean, the negatives, I mean, there weren't too many. It's not a movie that blew me away or anything like that, but it was a really interesting story. And the more it went on, the more I got into it, and I just thought, where the hell is this going? Dead Mail was a real nice surprise for me, and one of the best Shudder originals I think I've ever seen. So that is Dead Mail. Coming in third place, guys, believe it or not, is another Shudder original, and this movie has got a ton of bad reviews, and I do not understand it, and that is 825 Forest Road. I really got into this movie, guys, and it scared the shit out of me. So this is basically by director Stephen Cognetti, who did the Hell House movies, and if you're a fan of them, I suggest that you check these out. Although this is not found footage, it's just a straight up movie. But what he does with it is really interesting, having the movie take place from three different perspectives, kind of like the movie The Last Duel. So a situation will happen, and we will see how one character leads up to that situation. Then it will go back and see how another character leads up to that same situation. Then it'll go back and see how the third character leads up to that situation and what the hell is going on. And I thought that was so damn interesting. But this isn't really about a haunted house. It's about a haunted town. And Stephen Cognetti throws his little mannequin little thing, talent in there. I think he just knows how to use mannequins well with horror, doesn't he? But there was one scene involving this horrible creature shouting to this girl from the kitchen, and I was like, why is my wife fell asleep here? Please wake up. I'm terrified here. I am not usually scared by films, but Stephen Cognetti has managed to scare me on 3 different occasions now, with the first Hell House movie, the 4th Hell House movie, and this. So yeah, I was really digging this movie. I really enjoyed it. The acting is a little bit off from some of the characters, but the other characters do a pretty decent job, I suppose. It's just a really cool horror film. So for me, this one totally worked, and it's one of the scariest movies I've seen in a while. Well, since the last Hell House, which is the same director, of course. So guys, I know a lot of people don't like this film. I've seen 2-star reviews and stuff over on Letterboxd, but this is one of my favourite horror movies of the year so far. I really dug it. So that is 825 Forest Road. Next up, we do have Drop, which is more of a thriller movie than a horror movie, but I just thought I'd throw it in here anyway. There's enough horror aspects thrown in here to let it qualify for this video. This follows this widow who is basically going on her first date in years, and while she is at the restaurant, these random messages drop on her phone asking her to do certain tasks, or her son and the babysitter at home will be killed. And the camera kind of shows her this guy in her house who's basically got her son and the babysitter hostage, basically. And when he keeps asking her stuff, she's got to do it. Something might involve going to the bathroom or having awkward situations in front of her date, to ultimately poisoning her date and killing him. And as that happens, the tension builds so much, but you know it's someone in the vicinity because these message drops only happen within a certain radius, basically. And she's not allowed to leave or anything like that. And it feels like this person is watching her every single move. Even if she tries certain things to cheat her way out of it, this person knows. And I thought this was a really fun film. Like, it kind of reminded me of Red Eye, a situational type movie where a character is put into a corner there. I like the whole setting of the restaurant. It felt like you were in a real sort of restaurant there. You know, the sound and everything of the people around just worked really well. The acting was great from these two main leads. You kind of got invested in them. You know, really felt sorry for the main female protagonist in this movie. But yeah, I thought this was really fun. And you know, even though it reminded me of Red Eye and stuff, it was nice to see a film like this on the cinema. I felt like I haven't seen one of these in a while there on the big screen. So yeah, really, really great, you know, sort of thriller. And the only sort of negative with it is you really do have to suspend your disbelief a lot, because yeah, it kind of, if you think of M. Night Shyamalan's Trap last year, where it had asked you to suspend your disbelief, it's not on the level of that film, but there are some things where you're like, really? I can't quite get on board with that. But you kind of let it go because you're enjoying the movie that much, if that makes sense. So yeah, it finds a nice balance there, I suppose, although it does tilt it one way a little bit, but not to the point where I couldn't sort of flick it off like a fly and go, oh no, I can't get on board with this no more. I was always invested till the end. So yeah, Drop, one of my favourite movies of the year so far. That is Drop. In first place, though, is going to be Sinners. Yes, you guessed it. This movie's been getting a ton of praise, guys, and even though I went into it trying to keep my expectations held low, I think the movie was kind of overblown a little bit, but I still give it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And it is my #1 movie of the year. Not just horror movie, but my #1 movie of 2025. But I wasn't absolutely blown away by it. However, it's a very, very good film. This follows Michael B. Jordan, who's playing these two twins, who basically have got this load of money. They come back to their hometown and they want to open up this blues joint. And they invite everyone from the town to get there that day and make this big night of it. And they're getting the local music talent, and one of them being their cousin, who's this upcoming blues artist, and people who've played blues for years, get them in there to play all this music on that night and make a big night of this opening, of this bar that they want to sort of bring forward and give to this town. And Michael B. Jordan is kind of a character you don't kind of mess with, but he's a very fair character. Well, both of them, should I say. The people you can kind of get behind, even though they are hardened criminals. And Michael B. Jordan just puts a great job in here. But they've basically got romances going on and everything, and that's all written into the story nicely. But all the side characters in this film, I will say, just work. I mean, some of them are only given small amounts of screen time, but they are memorable characters just because the personality that they bring. The world Ryan Coogler has crafted together here in 1930s Mississippi is gorgeous to look at. And I love movies that take place in the outback of America, and this one is just, yeah, you're living and breathing this world. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, guys, maybe turn the video off now. I'm not going to get into like spoilers that are going to ruin the film or anything, but if you have not seen the trailer, you know nothing about this film, maybe don't watch the rest of what I'm going to say. But this is all in the trailer and everything. This is actually a vampire film, and when we sort of get to that, the movie elevated even more for me, even though it did feel very familiar to From Dusk Till Dawn. However, I loved the head vampire of Jack O'Connell, and the way the vampires look and everything, with the glowing eyes and the sharp teeth, but nothing too much more than that. No dodgy makeup or anything like that. They just looked grounded in this grounded story and this grounded world where you could kind of believe vampires do sort of exist. And when all that happens, yeah, I loved the second half of the movie. So yeah, a great film from Ryan Coogler. He always hits. Him and Michael B. Jordan seem to be a match made in heaven, don't they? My only problem really with it was the dialogue. I couldn't really make out what some of these characters were saying. Now that might have been my cinema screen. I've had people say that they could hear everything, and I've heard other people say that they agree with me and say the sound was really struggling. I don't know if it's the accents or the sound mixing, but I feel like a lot of movies do this, you know, a lot of the time, really. But Sinners is one I'm really looking forward to rewatching again. I think I'm going to get a little bit more out of it on rewatch. Maybe the movie was kind of just overhyped too much, even though I went in with level expectations. But I still really liked it. It was a solid film, and like the music and everything is phenomenal. I believe lots of people have been listening to the soundtrack of this film, me being one of them, and I can only imagine people are going to be listening to it for years to come. So yeah, Sinners, #1 movie of the month and #1 movie of 2025 so far. Okay, guys, what did you all think of these movies? Please do let me know in the comments down below. I'll get back to you all, I promise. What's your favourite movies of April, and did I miss any? Please do let me know. I'll have another monthly video coming out at the end of May, but it might be a little bit late because there's a few days I'm going to be away there, and there's Danny Filippo's film coming out at the end of the month, but I'm just not going to be here for that. So, yeah. I'll get it out at some point, put it that way. So yeah, guys, please do let me know what you thought of these movies. And if you like horror, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. It'll really help me out. Thanks so much, guys. You take care. I'll see you all in the next video.